Hello, my name is Harry Stegall, and as you can see, the background is a cemetery. Now this is a place that no police officer ever believes that he or she will end up in. Now I know you say that you accept the risk and the dangers of the job, but deep down inside, you really don't believe that it will happen to you. Now I know, because I sat in a classroom similar to where you probably are as a student, and I also sat in a classroom as an officer to learn more about survival and training. And the entire time I was in these classes, I thought deep down inside this would never happen to me. But it did. What I'd like to share with you is the simple fact that when you least expect it, you may be shot and killed. Now I was one of the lucky ones. Most people that are shot 7 times die. But I'm here to share my story with you in hopes that I can get at least one of you to remember how easy it is to be shot while on duty. 1 mile an hour got me shot, and I'm going to tell you about that 1 mile an hour as we move forward. But the first thing I want to tell you is that you need to remove the word routine from your vocabulary, because there is nothing routine about police work. I don't care if you stop the same motorist 2 days in a row, it's not routine. I don't care if you go to the same house on a call 2 days in a row, it's not routine. The only thing you do routine is that little maneuver you do in the mornings when you get up to take your shower and you shave and you do all those things. That's a routine. There is no routine in police work, because when you become too confident and it becomes a routine, you're subject to be hurt. I joined the North Carolina Highway Patrol in January of 1975. I went through 18 weeks of the most extensive police training in the world. We had people from different states constantly come to see what we did. When I graduated from that school, I was in as good a physical condition as any professional athlete in the world. It was amazing what my body could take and how far we had advanced in physical training in that academy. I, like you, are sitting there thinking, I'm too big, I'm too fast, I'm too smart to get shot. That's what I thought. Through that 18-week period, we studied apprehension and detention of dangerous felons. And we saw pictures of troopers that were killed in the line of duty. And we saw those pictures up close and personal. And while it upset me, I still didn't think that that could happen to me. And I'm sure some of you are watching this saying, this guy's crazy. He was one of the unlucky ones. Sure I was. But does that mean that you're not going to be one of the unlucky ones? So let me tell you how my story unfolded, and we'll critique it as we go along, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up a few things that may help you in your day-to-day work. This was October the 17th, 1975. I had probably made over 500 traffic stops. So this word, I'm going to call it the R word, was kind of in play. I'm working US 74 outside of Laurinburg. I'm facing westbound. Had already written the citation earlier in the day. It's 8:20 in the morning. And I saw an orange, couldn't make out exactly what kind of car because it was so far away, vehicle coming toward me, and the radar locked in at 64. and we always gave everybody 10 miles an hour over the limit, and back then the speed limit was 55. I reset the radar as the vehicle got closer and clocked it at 65. It locked in. There's that 1 mile an hour. If that driver had deaccelerated when he saw me, he would have been gone and I wouldn't have been shot and injured. But he didn't. So I began to pull out onto the traffic lane, and as the driver passed me, he looked at me very hard. Now, let's take a break here and talk about how people look at you. We know now, we didn't know then, but we know now that when a person turns their head past 90 degrees, all the way around like this, they're wanting to know if you're coming after them. People rubberneck. They look. They see a highway patrolman. They see a city police officer. They don't know what you're doing, but they're interested, and they look. They look like this or they look like this. But when they look like this, after you've already gone by, there's your signal. Well, we didn't know that at the time. And so this man looked at me all the way by and saw that I was pulling out. He decreased his speed a little bit. And as I crossed the median, got into the westbound lane, I guess the cowboy had kind of gotten out of me, so I didn't race after him and slam on brakes and pull in behind him like I used to. I did it like I was supposed to. I accelerated, got within close range of the vehicle to make a stop, deaccelerated, pulled in behind him, turned my blue light on, and he's all in the mirror. He's looking up in the mirror. He won't take his eyes off the mirror. Now, that may have been clue number 2. But at that time, nobody talked about that. We called it black and silver fever. If you drive a blue and white vehicle or a black and white vehicle or a blue vehicle, you're going to call it that kind of fever too, because people do become excited when a police officer of any kind pulls in behind them. They have no idea what's going on. So, as we proceeded westbound on US 74, he did not stop immediately. There was ample room for him to have pulled over as we started to cross the bridge on US 401 Business. But unless he had pulled completely over to the bridge abutment, we could have been in the traffic lane westbound. So I didn't get too excited about him not pulling over immediately. That may have been the next clue, that something was going on wrong. But at the time, I just made a judgment that it probably wasn't anything to worry about. We pulled onto the off-ramp, which is across the bridge and starts to circle around. He immediately pulled over. Now, normally you would think that the driver would pull over to the right-hand side. Now, the exit ramp was a little bit wider than one lane, but not 2 lanes. Very narrow shoulder. So if he had pulled over, he would have had to pull out into the grass, and we would have been doing business there in that off-ramp, or very close to that off-ramp, where traffic would have passed right by his driver's side and my driver's side of the car. Instead, he pulled over to the left-hand side. That could have been a clue. We were now going to conduct business over in the grass or on the shoulder, where vehicles passing us would have been on the outside and unable to see what was going on the left side of the driver's car and the patrol car. I didn't consider that unusual at the time. Nobody had ever addressed which side to pull over, why they would do that, so I didn't consider that a problem. When I got the vehicle stopped, I did what I always do, and that's check his registration from his license plate by the fact that it was valid, the date was right. I recognized the fact that the vehicle was registered in DeKalb County, which I knew from living in Atlanta years ago that DeKalb County was one of the 5 counties that made up the greater metro Atlanta area, so I recognized that. I also looked to see how the license tag was attached. Now, I had found out in previous months that a lot of stolen vehicles and unregistered or improperly registered vehicles use wire or string or rope or one bolt to put the tag on. But this vehicle tag looked like it had been on for a while. The bolts were a little rusty, so they weren't new. So the registration of the vehicle didn't bother me. Certainly I was going to check it, but there was nothing suspicious about the back of the vehicle as I started to exit the patrol car. Now that took me about 3 or 4 seconds to do that actually, so it's just kind of one of those things that always happens. It's just part of my, boy, I don't like to use that R word, but that's what I do. As I started to approach the vehicle, I looked into the rear compartment. It was a Volkswagen station wagon. In that compartment there was a green tarp, looked like an army tarp, and it was laying flat, so there was nothing underneath it that was big and bulky. I noticed that there was nothing in the back seat of the vehicle, so I didn't become alarmed for anything. There was no sign of trouble as I approached the driver's side window. He already had the window rolled down and his hands were placed in his lap. He did not seem nervous like I thought he might be from the fact that he was, doing this as I was following. I didn't even consider that at that point. I asked him for his driver's license. He opened a Sucrets can, which is, remember those cold lozenges come into, I think the candies come in them now, but he opened that Sucrets can, and inside was his driver's license and a couple of coins and some sort of a medallion. And even when he opened it, he did not seem nervous. He handed me his license, and I examined his license right there so I could, in my peripheral and normal vision, I could see any move he made. I noticed that his name was Gregory Hudson Jones, and I paid close attention because several states do driver's license registration, the first, middle, last with the first. They're all kind of crazy things, so I wanted to get it right. So I looked at it several times to make sure his name was correct, and I said, Mr. Jones, I clocked you for speeding back there on the bypass, and since you're an out-of-state motorist, I'm going to have to ask you to follow me to the magistrate's office to post bond. Well, I think those words triggered some thought to him that he knew trouble was ahead. What I didn't know was that this man was wanted for murder 100 miles east in North Carolina. He had shot 4 other people in 3 different incidents. He had kidnapped a man, broke into a house, so he was in the process of being declared an outlaw. But I didn't know that. It had not been broadcast on the radio yet. So I'm just stopping a guy for speeding. But obviously he knew that there was something else going on. As I started to just step away from the vehicle, just turned and took maybe a half a step, he said, "Hey." I turned back. He raised what was later determined to be a .380 automatic and fired 5 times. 4 times in the chest and once under my right ear as I began to turn. I was, needless to say, shocked. So now we have gone from officer safety to officer survival. There's no safety involved now. I'm trying to survive. So the first thing that you've got to do when you want to survive is you got to want to live. You can't be a quitter. As bad as it looks, as awful as it feels, you cannot be a quitter. You have got to do something to help you protect yourself, help you get back to your patrol car, call on your radio. You cannot just lay on the side of the road or inside of a building and just quit. That's the number one thing about officer survival, is the will to live. So I'm on the ground and I'm trying to assess what's going on here. I see blood squirting out. I'm spitting blood out. My head feels like what I thought might be like a professional baseball player hitting the ball out of a park would hit me in the side of the head. It was excruciating pain from the shot to the side of the head, and I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm beginning to get lightheaded and unbalanced. So I'm on the ground And again, I'm trying to assess what to do. I had his driver's license in my left hand, and as I fell, I tossed him out into the weeds. Now the weeds weren't very high, but I tossed him into the weeds. That was my attempt to make sure that whoever investigated that crime scene would find those driver's license. But this guy was a little smarter than that. He exited the vehicle, ran out and got his driver's license, which were only about 10 or 15 feet out. I mean, how far can you throw a driver's license? He came back, flying back towards me with his hands stuck out, and fired twice more, hitting me in the arm and in the pelvis area. And then he stood over me and he pulled the trigger, but he was out of bullets. He then reached down and unsnapped my Smith & Wesson Model 19 357 loaded with 158 grain steel jacket hollow point bullets, and pulled it out and held it towards me, but never did this. And about the time he got the weapon up, a vehicle came off of the off-ramp, and I suppose it scared him. He didn't want to pull the trigger and make that loud boom. So he scrambled back to his car, got in, and drove off. Now, I'm on the side of the road, and I am saying to myself, I was raised as a Christian, and I said, Lord, if you'll help me out here a little bit, I'll try to be a better person, because I sure need some help. And as I started to try to get up, I couldn't. And at the same time, another vehicle passed and saw me on the side of the road. He immediately stopped, came back, looked at me, jumped around, panicked, bless his heart. He did all he could do. He got in the patrol car, tried to use the radio, messed that up, and said, I'm going for help. And I tried to tell him that if he would just switch to channel 1 and use the radio, tell him there'd been a trooper shot on the bypass behind the Chevrolet place in Laurinburg, that's all he needed to do. Help was right there in the floorboard of that car. But he couldn't operate the radio, so he jumps out, he drives to the end of the off-ramp, goes across 401 Business, and there's a gas station there where he asked him to call an ambulance. Now, my will to live was as strong as it had ever been, but I couldn't get up. So on the ground, on my back, I took my legs and I pushed, and I scuffed myself all the way back to the patrol car. Now, you say, how do you know you had a will to live? This is crazy, but what was going through my mind as I was scuffing along the ground was, I'm messing up my belt and my pants. I won't be able to wear this back to work. I know that sounds crazy, but that was what was going through my mind. I knew I'd already ruined my shirt, but I didn't want to ruin that patent leather belt I had on. I pushed myself back, came underneath the door, got a hold of the door handle. My right side was paralyzed. I could not use my right arm because of the bullet actually went in here and crisscrossed and cut some nerves as it went across here, so this was numb. And I pulled myself around with my left hand, and I knew that the only way I was going to survive, or I felt like the only way I was going to survive, was to get in that car and get on that radio. That was my goal. So I said, okay, I would have done all I could do if I can get to that radio. And I did. I pulled and pushed and scraped, got a hold of the steering wheel with my left hand. I pulled myself up into the car. I couldn't, as I said, couldn't use my right arm. I had to reach over, get the radio, which he had dropped in the floor and was on the passenger side of the vehicle, pull it back over with the cord. I keyed the button, and I realized he had changed channels and I was on a dead channel. So I had to now reach over and switch channels on the radio to get on channel 1 to make my call. I knew I had one chance to do it, and I needed to do it right. So I keyed the mic, and I very calmly said, H238 E-Town, I've been shot. I'm on the bypass behind the Chevrolet dealership. Subject Jones. H238 E-Town, I've been shot. I'm on the bypass behind the Chevrolet place. Subject Jones. And I let go, and I felt myself becoming extremely dizzy and lightheaded, and I passed out in the floorboard of the patrol car. I had done everything I could do physically to survive, and I knew that. Well, fortunately for me, I didn't die. I was picked up by a rescue squad. In a few minutes, I was taken to the hospital. I was airlifted to Chapel Hill. They worked on me, did all the kinds of things, and that's not what this is about. This is about survival and how easy it is to get shot when you have no idea who's driving that vehicle. What I didn't know, and I subsequently found out, that Gregory Hudson Jones was wanted for murder and 11 other felonies, and in the process of being declared an outlaw in New Hanover County. He was a bad guy. He's in prison for the rest of his life. He'll never get out, and that's the way it works. Thank God for his help and intervention for me to be able to survive. One of the things I want to share with you also is that every time you have contact, whether it's on the interstate, whether it's on a back road, if you're a city officer or a sheriff's deputy, you go to someone's house, you have a call for a robbery, it makes no difference where you are. You have to be prepared to defend yourself every step of the way. I just read that there was a Pennsylvania police officer got into a gunfight on duty in a movie store, video store, with two guys that walked in with the intention to rob it. The man didn't have a chance, but he fought diligently against those two assailants. But that's how easy it can turn around on you. So please don't sit there and think, this is not going to happen to me. It can happen. Even on a call that the driver's cooperative, you don't know what's in the side seat or the back seat of that vehicle. It could be anybody. One of the things that I see happen almost every day is a police officer on a traffic stop turns their back on the driver and walks back to his patrol car. Turns his back on the driver and walks away. You've got to keep your eye on the driver, because my guy didn't look suspicious. And so that person that you stopped for whatever that doesn't seem suspicious, you may be the only thing standing between him and jail, and you don't know that. So you have to be prepared to defend yourself, to defend your life in every situation. If nothing happens, you've had a great day. You've gone on about your business, but you're alive. Now, as I said to start with, my goal is simply to make you aware of how easy it is to be shot, how difficult it is to survive, but you've got to have the will. I hope that this will ring a bell and that you'll remember this, that your department critique it, talk about it, and that it'll help save someone's life. Thank you for your time.